Nora, Aji Simbanamji, kissing as Randa, Shen, Rangu, and Shen Yu, Rashan Yi, Rangu, Tarchimbatan, Shen Simjatamji, Randu on the Jabana, Shen Yu on the Jabana, Kawa to Yetila, and then all that do you do, and then Chigi, do it and Nekap, Gidi, Dustin, Yaman Chabayana, Sanji Sumbi, and Lava, Lavanya, Chanchusimba, Lava. Sonship did a megawatt, and it or the nigger sonship lava tele Pesuchin and Yamanche or essay or to Chene Shivare.
Good evening. So last week we looked at a couple of verses wherein it's presented that the Bodhisattvas strive for both their own benefits as well as the benefit of others. And we looked at what the meaning of that is in the context of Bodhisattvas. And we also looked at a verse striving that presenting that because of the very broad education that Bodhisattvas ensure they obtain, they are thereby able to, whatever they are engaging in, they are able to do so in a way that brings benefits and therefore leads to the accumulation of virtue.
Just in that Tamji, Gayu, Legores, Jason Carres, and Semjin, you doing Chevala, Shen Semja Tamji, Pando Juvala, and Kui Guguyo Banza, and Malabi, and their Kaya Mess, and that Tamjela, Labian, Della, Cavache, the Nigi, Kaviki, the Nigger Sunam Gang, the Sunam Jachimbo Sagores, the Nigi Shanla Pembigi Jawa, Jachimbo Gores. Kissing out the tea or shiver that it's needed.
Moreover, Bodhisattvas don't merely strive or only strive to accumulate a broad a level of education, but they strive to gain mastery in all that, in every area they possibly can, because they recognize that in order to fulfill their aspiration of being of great benefit to others, they need to be able to interact with others in the most skillful manner appropriate to each individual and their particular circumstance. Therefore, the Bodhisattva will not be satisfied with even with a particular level of good qualities developed, but will strive to develop as broad, excellent qualities as possible in order to benefit others. And having this broad level of skill and developing it to the level of mastery, they are thereby ensure they bring great benefit to others and accumulate extensive merit.
And the nigger gave catching Mujubati, Kawadi, Shazania, Shen, Simja, Tamji, San Yoko, to be Chidu, Unculum, Mugores, and Dicor Masherida, Muagor.
Continuing in the same vein as what we looked at last week, we come to look at how the Bodhisattva explicitly strives to attain Buddhahood for the sake of others. The 101st verse, whether directly or indirectly, do not do anything that is not for the sake of sentient beings, and for the sake of sentient beings alone, dedicate everything towards enlightenment.
Simjaya, Simji, Digituata, Tumaselia, Shen Simjala, and Jimbi, Jimbata, Sansingi, Jimbataya Soba, Dushine, Sansi, Penyamda, Beseta, Dogota, Denigi, Chiki, Manju, Ganga eating Ilia, Desilia, Dushine, Sansingi, Jimbata, and Jeppe Dungale Joya, Gumbe Dungale Joya, Chabe Dungale Joya, Denin, Neg Dungale Joya, La Soba Dushine, Sansingi, Musu Dushine. Jimbata, Jimba Pemberu or Edge. That's asking a Jimba. That Chiki Jimba in a Anjing Mashape, Yamlenchi Chigi, Chiki Semji, Dunga Seada, Tiki to the Tablam, Yamna Yimbatiki, Dame Mashi, then Yamsu Lenjo, then Semji, Dushin, Tiki, Gasa, Semchen Tiki, 주야다 동아세야 탑람 댄제 아니 디기 주야기 두스chen 셴는 주고래 심어섬 내가 셴sem제 안지게 냠다밤 지게 소를 교야로서 봐 되니게 강할래 교야다 소를 교야 내나서로 교야기 두신 무엇도 두신 로바체제도 교야 아니 미치비 동아래 세야 동아 짐바다제 아니 좀 편용 수르제 두신 선은 요 소사고래지 정말 삼세티세고래
Looking at the first line, whether directly or indirectly. So looking first at the direct activities of a bodhisattva. The activities of a bodhisattva we recognize are explicitly for the benefit of others. In other words, all the bodhisattva engages in is so as to bring benefit to others. So when directly helping others, they will do so through practices such as generosity. That they'll practice material generosity so as to help others overcome problems and difficulties, perhaps ensuring that they overcome impoverishment and other needs, and also to help beings attain happiness and suffer less. Bodhisattvas will look for other ways to be generous. The second form of generosity is that of giving fearlessness. So this is where beings are in grave danger, their life is in danger. So this may be expressed through helping an animal who faces imminent death, or perhaps helping those who will otherwise die from illness, to help them gain medical treatment and so forth. So this would be a second expression of generosity. And the third expression of generosity from the Bodhisattva, perhaps the most important, is to teach others, to teach them what the causes of suffering are and the causes for happiness, and guide others in the cultivation of the causes for happiness and abandonment of the causes that will lead to suffering. In other words, the giving of the Dharma, whereby the Bodhisattva guides beings in how to transform their very way of thinking. So these would be examples in terms of the three types of generosity that a bodhisattva will explicitly or directly give of themselves to benefit others.
menda sorry bada men sorry bala sobada dine jari bala soba denigi jiga lobsang jege ki la soba lobsang jeji ba jang ju de du shene en ko zu ge digi du ya da gang se ya tabla de ya ge dan de la ya de le du shene mo mang yong go wa de na so yong go wa inji mi ji che kya ya she wa yo ma da ko le ya pen do ya ge ka le ya ga ro ji 그런 동화 세 되게 주야다 강한 세계 탑람 콜라 판도 하리여베네 디차사도 신데 고르와
Held by this motivation of bodhicitta, the bodhisattva will do all they can to help beings ease their suffering and develop themselves to attain happiness. So the very best way is to teach the Dharma, and so for those beings who have the imprints to have an inclination in the Dharma, the Bodhisattva will teach them. And it may not be just the Buddha Dharma, but other form of philosophy, or religion. But for those who aren't inclined or inclined in a strong enough way to the Dharma, the Bodhisattva still will try to benefit them in any way. So last week we looked at the five major topics of knowledge and the 5 minor topics of knowledge. So the Bodhisattva therefore will strive to gain a broad education to help others through perhaps teaching a treatise on medicine, so that beings can look after themselves physically well, or teaching them poetry or grammar, so that beings can gain skills in these areas, and the Bodhisattva can have a positive influence on them too, or teaching them arts and crafts, and so forth.
모수 판마도 베나다 양치 semjen 담지 디기주야 돈달이야 수수기에네 지게 직참제 개와 베네 아주게 동반이 공발라서 받아 잠니지 공발라서 봐 Denige and this control cheva poada, and the cha sewa the cheva poa, Denige susu gejo rubia jorwa, on Denige gejo rubiada, Denige jamnijo combat, no by new combala sobada, Denige tam doing your senior combala soba, this chaza that Susugi do see Yamden Chedi, Simjan Tamji, Dondala, San Yoko to be Chudu, and Simjan Tanja Pendi to be Dondal Yamden Chigorova. Tenza, Digi, Susugi Tomba, you go by the Ngosu, go by the Ngosu, Simjilia, Gangasia, Kudu to Padugo Marwada, in other huge Rani, and the Yamne Yarcheta, and Sunum Churchadu, Di Tupkishan, Pendo Gachibu to Gorva. Tenza, Guyan Siadi, that's Rani, Benem. Controller Chipopua, Chasewa, and Nishinio comba, Tombanyo comba, Jamnijo comba, Dusian Susu, Net Dusian Comjam, Garup Jadi, Gavati Shigore, the Nigga Gavati, or Guyan rooms at this order.
There were some illustrations of how a bodhisattva will strive to explicitly or directly benefit others, have a beneficial impact on others. The bodhisattvas will also, through indirect means, strive to be of benefit to others. So illustrations of how bodhisattvas will indirectly benefit others is through transforming their own mind, developing their own inner good qualities, through their own accumulation of extensive virtue. So this could be expressed as meditating on emptiness, meditating on love, compassion, or bodhicitta, or through making offerings to the three jewels or prostrations, or abiding in retreat. So these are activities that the bodhisattva themselves will engage in, so they are not being done directly in relation to others. However, the motivation is very clear. This is to benefit others. So thereby, through the bodhisattva developing their own inner qualities, through their own ongoing spiritual developments, the bodhisattva indirectly benefits others through this great accumulation of merit and dedication of this merit and transformation of their own mind. The bodhisattva brings benefit to others indirectly.
And that you said the Susugi, Shan Chilia, Shan Ganga Yun Chilia, Chikjamba and Zewa Combaina, the niggas, there was some down to Buddhism Yida, Mosu Holia Pash Yung Marwa. That's just Jamze Combi, Combi Kenji, the D Kenji, that Digi Jamze, Shanlia, Pembe, Sambio, Kuno did you about the D Kenji, Lungagi, and Shanlia, Pembe to your Yungra, just now going to Hola Lamdo Jedu Suchia. Dunga Sien the Lamdesia, then I took and say, Lasso Chimate, Chimataya La Sobada, then the Sola Juvia La Soba, Lungagi, Musu Pegi, Javati, Carri was now Kuno sent to Yungura. Cesade, Musu Pegi, now Kuno di Musu, Machivena di Genjin, and the Lungagi Jobata Shelia, and Chimbe Yamanjin, Pingu Baza, Tiguka, Gusia at this word, Guinea Pampas.
For example, meditating on or cultivating love and compassion for suffering beings. This is something that doesn't really bring direct benefit to others. The bodhisattva engaging in extensive meditation, generating virtuous qualities such as love and compassion, this does not directly ease the suffering of beings. However, through the strengthening of such a virtuous mind within, later, through the bodhisattva's physical interactions or speech, verbal interactions with others, benefit will certainly come. So this will be an illustration of indirectly engaging in action, that of cultivating, say, love and compassion, which will indirectly bring benefit to others. Because when we engage with others through our physical behavior or our verbal communication, whether that is virtuous or not depends on the quality of the motivating intention, the mind behind or the mind directing the speech and physical behavior. So when the bodhisattva is cultivating ever more powerful, virtuous ways of thinking within, they are not directly benefiting others, but are in that moment, indirectly benefiting others in that later, because of this inner development, this spiritual progression, they will be able to more effectively be of direct benefit to others later.
어도 rangi ngosu jimbe nyamne chi se osu roba che da dene ani che rangi ge jamni che la stomba ni komba la soba dine ke wa tuya de ge da gyube ko ne se sungorwa ya ngo samse di dishi ngo so so ge roba che de ya gyu se de rangi ge shen le kuma che shen ke wa tu chu che shen semje le ke wa tu chu ba ina dene ge shen semje ke wa tu be ke wa di gyube ke wa cha ge ro so我是嘛主先来叫人的那些古嘛就先来咱们这先也给我主要主去吧的先也你先那都现在给我主去吧那你具备给我预年给我啥吧是
Then illustrations of direct benefit would be where the Bodhisattva directly engages with beings, helping them in ways as expressed. So the three practices of generosity, for example. And indirectly would be illustrations such as engaging in meditation, cultivating the Dharma ever more within, meditating, say, on emptiness or love and compassion. A further illustration, though, of being of indirect benefit to others would be through explicitly telling those with whom they have influence to engage in virtue, to do this or to do that. And thereby, the Bodhisattva is not the one actually engaging in the various virtuous deeds, but instructing others to do so. So this would be a way the Bodhisattva would get others to engage in beneficial activities they otherwise wouldn't have.
펜베 sembe kunye langje shen le 펜베 chido kewa tubari mado rangdungi chido shen mi che rangi dunda le kewa tubuyo mare che semjen dunle shen mi che se.
Whether the Bodhisattva is directly or indirectly engaging in activity to be of benefit to others, their motivation is just that, to be of benefit to others. And this is then expressed in the second line. Anything that is not for the sake of sentient beings, or do not do anything that is not for the sake of sentient beings. So all the activity of the Bodhisattva is to benefit others, not a motivation of self-interest, but for a wish to ease the suffering of others, to bring benefit to others. And with that motivation, the Bodhisattva engages in either direct or indirect activity.
지나다 되네게 개원 무슨 규비고는 개월도 받을 장기도네 말해서 랑이 디기야다 랑이 탈바 토야기 치도 디자 많이 바지 샘제 탐지기도네 제발이자 신 샘제 될래 신제민 샘제 된기 치도 마도 랑기 치도 제발 말해서 엔자 제주 샘비게 개회 자와 강도 바 탐지 자와 강제 바 탐지 샘제 권에 된기 치도래 샘제 권나 Remember round the corner said the rank doing Gayam was rounding by Gagor, Semjan Kone doing each other, and Semjan Kona digi doing each other, Semjan Kona and the Koyo Dungal Church, Tarba Tamji Kimiko to be chido, Sung Javare Chigores.
So in the second line we see, do not do anything that is not for the sake of sentient beings. So there should be no self-interest in one's motivation. Certainly, one shouldn't be striving for one's own liberation, one's own individual liberation. And this is further expressed in the third line, and for the sake of sentient beings alone. So solely for the sake of sentient beings should one be engaging in activity, whether direct or indirect. And it should be without any trace of self-interest, but focused solely on helping beings attain lasting, stable happiness. In fact, attain the state of omniscience.
장주 치료고 시대 심지어 탐지기도 산지역고 뭐 투비 치도 아니 교롱어 뭐래 사실 뭐.
Then the final line shows again seals off this entirety of activity, from the cultivation of an excellent motivation to the expression of that motivation, whether through direct or indirect beneficial activity that is focused solely on benefiting beings, benefiting them and guiding them in whatever means possible to cultivate the causes for happiness and attain eventually the state of omniscience. So for that motivation, the Bodhisattva, through that motivation, the Bodhisattva then comes to dedication, dedicating everything towards enlightenment, that all beings arise as Buddhas.
당고 제제 심제 탐지기도 산요고 토비치도 규모고리 심제 탐지기도 농고고리세 다 심제 탐지기도 장주 톱치롱고 시대 심제 탐지기도 라니 산요고 토비 규르교쇼세 다양 야 심제 탐제 산요고 토비 규르교쇼세 두스모베나 지나 되는고 와는 거 제바나 되니게 계사디 배낭을 주게 아주 개와디 개와치만 원료고 토버쇼세는 말란 제바이나 디기 몰람제비 뭐 다디케와 사샤바디 데니기 원료 고바도 규르고 와이나 모아제바나 개와치만 원료 고바 토비하나 안디 다딩가 사베 개와디기 제부 조사르다 제부 조사 요 말이시래 제가 딜레 개체와지 야 딜레 개체와 심전 개와치 가서 원료 고바 탈베 고바 토버 쇼스는 거 와인기나 개와디다 탈베 고바 마도기 바도 개위 뉴바디 요래스네 다디 체래 다다다 탈비고마 토선는데 개와디만 니버 조사래다. 요 말이 지금이야 요 말이지. 다 심전 탐지기도는 산요고본 토벌 쇼셔야다. 심전 탐지 산요고본 토비 규규어 쇼. 쇼스 뭐 있나? 아니 심전 탐지 산요고본 마토비 봐도 아니 개위 니버디 용거래스. 제자다 심전 탐지기도는 산요고본 마토비 봐도 니버 용하자 되니 개와디 배면서 개와 개침 보자고 그래지래. 지난 개와디 되네게 오오이 토네 야 개체 못하고 그래서 심제 탐지도 제바 개와디다 그래서 심제들라 타이바 인자 안 되니게 개체와 개와디야 개체와 용거래지 인자다 자주 탐지 자주치 자주 그런 거 그래서 다 자주 sem바는 도 뭐거래지다도 뭐하는 거래지.
And the fourth line where it says dedicate everything towards enlightenment, whilst it doesn't say explicitly, but it refers to the dedicate everything, all the merits accumulated, whether directly or indirectly, towards all beings attaining enlightenment. So the Bodhisattva is not dedicating to their own enlightenment, but to the enlightenment of each and every single sentient being. So especially for those of us who still aspire, who aspire for the Bodhisattva paths, who haven't attained them, we should know clearly, though, that when merit is dedicated to the enlightenment of all sentient beings, this includes you. You are not excluded from that. So when a Bodhisattva dedicates towards enlightenment of all sentient beings, they are included within that, as they are one amongst all sentient beings. Therefore, whilst the Bodhisattva's motivation is sincerely on others beyond themselves, they too will benefit from their endeavors. And when we dedicate virtue, this virtue or this merit that is now being dedicated, we acquired it often with some effort and with some a conscious effort that we once again set out to accumulate virtue. So it doesn't come so easily. Therefore, we should make sure that we accumulate this merit with the best motivation possible and dedicate it with the best motivation possible. Because within the Dharma, there are 3 Dharma goals. And if one dedicates it to this merit accumulated to one of the lesser goals, such as attaining an excellent rebirth, this merit will be part of the causes leading to that. But then when that result is attained, that merit is completely exhausted. Or if one dedicates the merit towards attaining one's own individual liberation, when that is attained, it will have been attained partly in dependence on this merit, but then that merit's exhausted. Whereas if one, from the outset, dedicates one's virtue to all sentient beings, without exception, attaining full and complete enlightenment, that merit accumulated will never lose its potency or its energy until that goal is achieved, until each and every single being has attained Buddhahood.
Denege, Moaja, Nangores, and Jesimbi, Dending Oashu, that the Geseshuala Chimbig, Junju, Liu, Juba, the Chazan Oja, Molam, Liu Chade, Dinan, Mangon, these two Sine, Chick, Rova in the Denege, Sikti, Chazan, Chick. Quite which had this is a molam did molam Yachimushu Yagan, those Chenayar, Chesa somebody you do language. I just about them, you might be molam Gaya Messi, molam de la Gang, Yachi, Tapco, said to Sumore.
Dedication is actually an activity that Bodhisattvas put a lot of energy into. It's not just the mere final conclusion and then it's all done, but rather it is an activity that put their heart into. And this we can recognize in this very text composed by the great Bodhisattva Shantideva, in that the 10th chapter is a chapter of dedication. There are more than 50 verses expressing the dedication of merit. So we should take this as an example of the activities of a bodhisattva, that dedicating merit to the enlightenment of all sentient beings is an activity of bodhisattvas.
Ana denege janjusemba denege dade janjusemba namje randa ngwesum gyubyo kune kewe sabadige ani kewa sabadia semjen khone dundo sagores randung dundo sago mares tezanda kewa sajibe kewa rashen randa shenge sabe kewa chasang ngwe dia semje tamjige dundo ngogore mada rani digi nyor sho rani ne kwal jo sho den ngogo ma semje tamjige dundo ngogore chesa dinesa es Gewa saya dia semja khone duno savare sagore ani ngoai dia semja khone duno ngore je dosine sumoro da.
So therefore, in summary with this verse, whether everything the bodhisattva does is focused on benefiting others. This is their sincere intent. What is motivating their activity is, through this activity, may I ease the suffering of others, may I help them gain the causes for lasting happiness. And then the activity follows, and whether it's one where they're directly engaged with others or indirectly engaged with others, that is their motivation, a motivation free from self-interest. And then when it comes to dedicating the merit accumulated, it's dedicated in line with that motivation. A dedication free of self-interest, a dedication towards the complete, lasting, stable happiness for all beings, that all beings may become Buddhas.
Randung somebody Guen Chishores. Is a new mole, Randung somebody Guen Chewa Sungo, Dagoreje. Is that Randung somebody? New more the Genjusima Papa the Genjusiman of Guinea, new more the Guinea, good Beje Tanji, Shenle, Pendogi, Pendobe Jawal, Jusugores. Is that men do nashin, do the ya, Duginaya, more Duginaya, Yanji Shelia, Dungasia, Digitubia, Nena Sel, Bejitan Hugor, Dinashi. And Shala Soba in there, Chita Yomore, Chenjisabanam, and it is so, and it Shanley Pembe Jawal took to Yelly Page down to Gores. The Randon is somebody said, that's all bunches of Gun Chisho Dires. She said that Randon is somebody by that Rajan Nigala Ganga, the Randon is somebody in Yungore said. She said that Randon is somebody to Gunju Tongor. She said the Nyambodi guide, Shen Chis in Samba, Shen Sim Jenam. Ninja committee, Ninja, Jamba committee, Jam Ninja committee is more.
In the third line, where it says, for the sake of sentient beings alone. So in particular this, for the sake of sentient beings alone. This points to the very focus of great compassion. Great compassion is focused on the needs of all sentient beings, without exception, and all equally, not holding some as more important, as dearer than others, but seeing that all beings have the same equal right to attain a state freed of suffering. So this then indirectly points to the primary enemy of a bodhisattva, which is their own self-interest, where they would place their own needs first and foremost. So this is often expressed as self-cherishing, but here it's really, I'm presenting it as one's own self-interest, where one's needs are placed first. So this is the primary obstacle for a bodhisattva. And recognizing this, they will also have seen how one's own self-interest lies behind the rise of afflictions. So when afflictions arise, they will recognize that these afflictions pose grave danger because they may well be in the afflictions arising in a manner of enforcing or directing the bodhisattva towards achieving their own self-interest. And this is contrary to the bodhisattva ideal. It's contrary to everything that she believes in. So therefore, striving to gain freedom from self-interest, striving not to, or being on guard so as not to be deceived by self-interest, when afflictions arise for the bodhisattva, those afflictions will not deceive the bodhisattva, and therefore, even though afflictions have arisen, those afflictions can be transformed into the path to enlightenment. To be able to do that, the bodhisattva focuses on cultivating love and compassion, and as love and compassion in order to develop the other cherishing mind, in order to hold others as dear. In this way, they guard themselves from self-interest, and they are thereby able to transform afflictions into the path to enlightenment.
제사 랑게 되바 주고 랑게 되바다 마두디 되바다 메팀 버치고나 인디 지게 메팀 버치고로 랑게 되바나지 마두나 안델야 안지 당아 차다제 랑제 삼로유디 안에 돕쳐와이나 안디게 뇌슈제나서 바다 되는 용거로 제사 되네자 랑제 삼로디 되네레세 나 순고로 바다
grasping at oneself as the old self-cherishing mind. This is something that needs to be looked at closely, because one can come to understand it quite easily, but just on a coarse or superficial level. But watch that when you recognize an affliction that has arisen, look for the role that self-cherishing played in that. And you'll recognize at the heart of this affliction is self-cherishing. So it's clearest when there's attachment, this I want things to go my way and so forth. This has the I want my wishes to be fulfilled at the heart of the attachment. And what happens then? When things don't go in accordance with our desires, anger arises. So watch for this. And again, in particular, if you take anger in its fullest understanding, which is the whole breadth from frustration and annoyance all the way up to rage, even when it's minor anger such as frustration or annoyance. This is coming about because our wishes have not been fulfilled. And this is our self-cherishing. Our self-cherishing is now reacting to my wishes not being fulfilled, and frustration and annoyance or even anger or rage arise.
Anda danda de siji de danda de la kunlong la ya xian semjian kwani chi du kunlong xian lia xian pen sambi kwani kunlong che dene ngo so da rang ge ngo so xian la pen ba zhu ba pen ba jin de ge wo zhu ba an yu ne ge wo zhu ba cha sa an ngo ya de ngo su ge wo zhu ge wa de semjian tam ji du su ngo wo re sen danda ji sem ba de yu du xian nang go re se su ngo wa ji da de la de ne nga zu ge ne da 아주 랍자카르 난고르스네 제사다 Kunolia, Susugeta, Kawakadu, Tomo, Kunotilia, Shenlia, Pembesembu, Kunelango, Kunoche, Kunelan, Susukewa, Kangoji, Susunguso, that Shenle Pando, Jutubene, Pandoche, Musu Pandoche, Matuvene, Susugeta, Samnonaya, Jamba, Zewa, Las of Shembe, Pemba, Semle, Tigio Gomche, Dushen, that Shenla Nube, Samba Chigme, never Chigme, some Dushen, some Gomia, the Su, some Tangures, do some Daje, then Tamala Gavati, Shazaya, Simja Tamjigu, no more, such, on Dushen, on Jena, then it's your essay, Kuwaradan.
This verse summarizes very succinctly the way of life of bodhisattvas. They are guided by an ever-present motivation of holding the needs of others first and foremost. So in order to fulfill the needs of others, the bodhisattva engages in activity. And therefore, whether they are directly engaging with others or they are indirectly doing things which will indirectly benefit others, the motivation remains the same. And then finally comes the dedication, which too is towards the greatest wish for others, that is, that all beings attain full and complete enlightenment. So this is how bodhisattvas act. And for ourselves, who are still some way off from arising as bodhisattvas, we should take this illustration and emulate it as best as we can, starting out by cultivating this motivation, this determined attitude that everything that I will do, may it ease the suffering of beings. And have this as more than just an expression, but come with an emotional recognition, or an emotion that arises from a recognition on our deep interdependence with others, on our deep interconnectedness with others, and thereby give rise to a wish for them all to gain freedom from suffering and attain lasting happiness. And may everything I do today contribute to that, whether my contribution is with direct engagement or indirect engagement. May it lead to all beings attaining happiness. And then, when it comes to dedicate in this manner as well.
That in my that giving density sungoria. Dawar give shin Tian Dola Kavada, Janju Simbi do you show, so we share.
Now we come to the 102nd verse, which is on, as we see, a spiritual teacher. A spiritual teacher, a virtuous friend, who is learned and skilled in the meaning of the Mahayana and is supreme in the Bodhisattva yogic disciplines and practices, must never, even fleetingly, be forsaken, even at the cost of one's life.
Dabar Kiwi Shin is a Janju Simbanam Yeda, Janju Sembege, Janju Semkin, Janju Sembe, Tomba Sone, Sun, Dao, Sone, Deneson, Duda Nabokondo, Dabar, Yumecheba, and the Kiwi Shin, and the Tawachimbe Kiwi Shin, Dushin Tingor, as Sumura, Dabar Kiwi Shin is said, then Sumura. Shin is said, that Janju Semba Namgi, Janju Simbe, Tomba, Janju Semke, Tomba, Shune, Dene, Sone, and Tabachimbe Kiwishin, Tabachimbe Kiwishin, Gumba Cheva, San Yoko, Matabi Pardo, Tabachimbe Kiwishin, Dingores. That Dumba Shune, that is Dumba Shusan, then as in Tabas, Susan, Yamna. Dina Janju Semke, Janju Simbe, Dumba Sunsan, Janju Simbe, Dumba Lago, Lago, Chesnadi Lago and Zadi, Kiwishin, Tabachimbe, Kiwishin, and Tianjindus, Dingore, Dabar, Dudan, Dabar Yans, Denigi, Dene, Son, Dene Sonia, Dudaba, Gumacheba, and Lucian Tabachimbe, Kiwishin, Nedusian Dingore, Dabar Yan Kiwishin, he said. That is the Janju Sembalas.
Here, this is referencing a student who is a bodhisattva, who's generated uncontrived bodhicitta, and then takes the vows of a bodhisattva. So the person from whom they receive these bodhisattva vows, this new bodhisattva, whom they receive the vows of the bodhisattva, and thereby their bodhicitta is now suitable to be called engaging bodhicitta. The person from whom they receive the vows is their spiritual teacher or virtuous friend. So as a translator, I translated what I normally say as spiritual teacher, I also translated as a virtuous friend, which is the literal word. So it's the same term translated in two ways. So the new bodhisattva, who has now newly received the bodhisattva vows and thereby their bodhicitta is suitable to be called engaging bodhicitta, should continuously, uninterruptedly rely on this spiritual teacher. The spiritual teacher from whom they receive the bodhisattva vows.
Genju Sempe Duju Chok said. Chezanda Taba Chembi Che Sabadan Gachiwe Lam Yirimba Dige, Sosorangi Dundati Shingba Kaba, Di Dundati Church, Taba Chembe Sabadan Gachiwe Lam Yirimbi, Yamlendi Sosuli Kaba, Shingbaji. Shenlia Dumbala Dun Kabaj Gores. Chezan Tajan Dula Kaba Dance. Chezan Genju Sembage, Denigi, Genju Semban and Be Givishin, Deg, Givishin Digi, Kiju Kanish Gores, and Taba Chembi Namsha Sabadan Gachiwe Lam Yirimba Dige, and Dulai Sosugi Shinga, Sheba Hakoache, Shenle Dumbala Kabaj, Kabaj Gores, Kiju Chikche, Tijuniba Dilla, and Genju Sembe Dumba, Genju Sembe Duju Cho, said the Genju Sembe Jube Yamin, and the Tudumi Laba, and Laba the Dambas Gores, Jube Cho, Tudumi Laba, Yamish Gores, and that Muduchin Gores or on Genju Sembe Duju Cho, say, Chesan Givishin de la Kiju Cargors and Sabadan Gachiwe Lam Yirimbe, Namsha, Soso Shin, Shanla Dun Kaba, then the Shimbe Kabas Gores. Then Shan Machine Bene, Tigon, Dum Cabamena, Chagoma, Dun Shingores, Cabores. Dimas ended, then a cabin, Jerusalem, Dombe, Labi, Yamlena, Dombatsum, Dumba Social Mena, then Tigomare. Chesada, many Domba Nangor, Nayada, Lapcha was a Domba Cabach, Domba Will Gores, Jerusalem Big, Stube, Lava, Yamlin Chodo, Chocho, and then Sudumi Lava, Yamlish Gores, Labi, Yamlin.
Just before I come to what Geshe said now, so the change when you get to the fourth line, just you can cross out this or ignore this ever fleetingly, because there's a word at the beginning of the first line which is difficult to translate in here, but it's this word that I expressed verbally, that this continuously, in other words, just continuously rely on a spiritual teacher. So you can just take out this or ignore this ever fleetingly, but at the beginning of the first line is this word. It can be permanently, but here it means continuously rely on this spiritual teacher. Now to what Genna has just said, so looking at the second and third line, learned and skilled in the meaning of the Mahayana. This refers to the first quality that the spiritual teacher or virtuous friend should have, which is they should be highly knowledgeable and, in other words, learned, and skilled in other words, having cultivated the vast and the profound Dharma within themselves. So again, this learned and skilled is a way to translate a scholar. In some translations, you may have scholar, but it means that the teacher, the Bodhisattva teacher, is highly learned and is realized in what they are educated in, both the vast teachings and the profound teachings, and thereby are suitable to guide this new bodhisattva. And whilst here this is presented explicitly about a new bodhisattva, what is presented in this entire verse, including in the line above, is how all bodhisattvas will train, not just when they're new bodhisattvas and they're now newly receiving the bodhisattva vows, but right through the bodhisattva paths and the bodhisattva grounds as well. And then the third line presents the second quality that this virtuous friend, the spiritual teacher, should have, which is that they should be highly skilled in the training in ethics. So the way to understand the Bodhisattva yogic disciplines and practices, this refers to the Bodhisattva vows that the spiritual teacher is highly skilled in the higher training of ethics of Bodhisattvas, and thereby is again ideally suited to guide the new Bodhisattva too.
Dandala Kijun Sansum Yuyen Timbach Kuris or Tabachim Buda, Gavishin Dela, Denigi, Janjusambanamji, Denigi Yamnanchin, Yamnachi, Alasani Mother for the Deg, Gavishin Dela Kijun Sansum Yuyen Kuris, Kaba Sadi, that the Dirwa, Tichizan, Tarwatan Kasuril, Tabachim Lamji Rimba, and Sabana Jachu Lamji Rimba Dela Kaba, so Rani Kaba, Jenna doing Kabach, Kabach. Sambo Sadi. The Guno is Shania Pensim Zevi Sambu Gunel, Namachko Racer was in it, and as Zumbi Indian Tsumi Lava Temako, Zumba Lava, Jimba Lava, Choto Cuba, Tsuri Lava Temaniums, Lamachko Race, Chisan, Tabachimbe, Givi, Kitchen Sansumi in the Tembachko Race, Denigi, Denisi Masava in the Tabachimbe Givi in the Jimba, Givi in Delia. Dada Yamlin Dada Malavia love to at Jungo Marwa.
So therefore, these first three lines, the new Bodhisattva will receive vows from their spiritual teacher, and they will continuously rely on the spiritual teacher who possesses these two baskets of qualities, you could say. So the one being that the teacher is both learned and experienced or skilled in the vast teachings of the Bodhisattva, so the various methods and practices that lead to the cultivation of this remarkable motivation of the Bodhisattva, as well as being suitable to guide in the profound teachings of the Mahayana, in other words, the perfection of wisdom teachings. So this is the first set of qualities that the spiritual teacher has. And the second set is that he abides in and is skilled in guiding, in living in the vows of the Bodhisattva. So the training in ethics. And this is our third line. So such a spiritual teacher, the Bodhisattva will always rely on or continuously rely on throughout their training, life to life.
Nika Sansingo Kone, and the Cassie to do Timba Mase, and the Sosulia, Ganga Sola, Yanga Yubana, Sol above Jana, Sol Matawache, Jinsiam Kasuki, Kivishin, Tingo Edge, so which she had was.
The final line, so because the Bodhisattva is guided by this wish to free all beings from suffering, that nothing matters other than that, the Bodhisattva became a Bodhisattva and is relying on a teacher and living in accordance with the vows of the Bodhisattva. Therefore, because it's through relying on such a spiritual teacher, the Bodhisattva will fulfill their heart wish and become a Buddha in order to fulfill their Bodhisattva ideal. They will never forsake their spiritual teacher even at the cost of their life. That's the final line. Must never forsake even at the cost of one's life, or must never be forsaken even at the cost of one's life. So therefore, the Bodhisattva, no matter what hardships, the meaning of not forsaking even at the cost of one's life, no matter what hardships one encounters, one will not give up on the teacher. One will not turn one's back on one's teacher.
Tabachimbe Kivishin, Tabachimbe Lam Yamling Rimba, Savana Jachu Lam Rimba, La Kaba, and Dun Kaba, and the Janjusenbig, Lava Turing, Laban Yamling, Turing Lava, the Denibi, Janjusenbig, the Nigi Kivishin, dear, and the Janjusemba, and Namki, Janjusem, Janjusembe, Tombosoni, so they didn't do Gumba Sheba, Lama de Tenche, and the Chicken Gasori. Sansing on the Timbamaze and Chig Sogachia, Soga, Galacazina, Sogachia, and Metawache, and all the Lucine, Tingore, Essen, San Yoko Mato, you put Lucien Tingore, Essen, or the Dutch.
The meaning of the verse then is that a bodhisattva will rely on a spiritual teacher who possesses the qualities of being highly learned and skilled, in other words, realized in the teachings, both those of the method side, or the vast side, and the profound side, the wisdom teachings. And the teacher will thereby be ideally suited to guide the bodhisattva. And because of the second set of qualities, supreme in the bodhisattva yogic disciplines and practices, the teacher observes all the vows of the bodhisattva and thereby has the ideal ethical basis by which to guide the new bodhisattva or to guide their student. Recognizing the great importance of relying on a teacher in order to fulfill the aspiration of the bodhisattva, or the bodhisattva aspiration, then no matter what hardships are encountered in following the advice of the teacher and in striving to accomplish the various activities of the bodhisattva will never give up on the teacher, but will always follow the advice with deep reverence, recognizing that it is within their capacity and it is within their capacity to do so.
Audustine Dingure, Chicken Semba, Shandalene Ding, Gure, Sema, Soya Yunguraki, Lachimba, that, then she changes them a little board, it is in the comfort thing, Gure, such, Sungorwa, then the Jessica changes somebody to Dingure, such that. I didn't think Gure, said Malapchika Yungurwa.
How this should be understood is that this is an expression of a stable, lasting commitment. It's not just, there's an emotional response and therefore one makes such a commitment. This is a stable commitment. It's an unshakable commitment.
Yuwa na ju kom jaya ya nyamlan yuwa na bala ya chikil yen di pe masi ke chenpo pene ta nyamlan jage chige semla ya char to wal ma suna ya gombe de jugi le ya ane chige lobjong che ya saba char yoro wada dene ke chide ma ane dene ke lobjong che keng chi ku woro wada dene zada kewe shin di pe masi ke chenpo re sungor wada.
So in every field in life, relying on a teacher, someone who's an expert in that field and who skillfully guides one, is crucial. And that person is a key cause in one's own later success. So this is widely recognized within society. How much more so then when one is walking on a path that one has never walked on before in any previous life. For the entirety of the Bodhisattva journey, they are progressing along a new path, a path whereby they are cultivating ever greater qualities within them. And for this, they need a close guidance, and they need to rely on the guidance that they are receiving. Because in a sense, they are going into the unknown, helping beings in ways they would never have thought possible before, as well as diving into the depths of their own mind in terms of the ever subtler realization of the teachings.
Thinking give shin sitting gore, give shin gores, give shin dia, lam telia, can't lam nam shatige, shimbada, and so suge, the nigit on the lala yovas gores, the nigi mena, chike, yahotin bar no to your china, the new gore, what in is the nigor, the nigi give shin chi, the nigi lamano attention and delia, and do that number go to that, rangi, to shine.
So This is how Bodhisattvas rely on their spiritual teachers, and they do so throughout their journey through the Bodhisattva paths and later grounds. And we also need to rely on a spiritual teacher in the same way. We need to rely on our spiritual teacher to guide us in our spiritual journey as we progress towards eventually cultivating the Bodhisattva paths within. So this too is something where we are entirely dependent on someone who is skilled, someone who's learned and skilled in the various trainings that one needs to engage in, so as to develop the inner qualities that will eventually lead us to attaining the mind of a bodhisattva, the paths of a bodhisattva. So therefore, we too need to rely on our spiritual teachers in the way presented here. And we need to rely on them in the ways presented in the great text, and do so continuously until the final goal is achieved.
Mambuchi Kiabar Shusarva, Chesandini, Zada Kivishin, Ding, Lamsa, and Lamrim Nason, Kivishin, Dinada, Tambodilia, and Lomigi, Lamalia, Tachia, Lamigi, Lomalia, Tachia, Tushin, Mangosungora, Chesnada, and Tambon Lamaj Tear, the Lamsa Lama de Sunga de Lamsa, Yichema Chevache, and Konying, and some Chevachi, Shimchi, that Dushin, a Dushin, Gogore, Sache, Chesada. Gabrielia and the Chiki Tata member Shivin, so some Nale Tata Rochi, Imberto, or that Diresha, Yamadi Norsha, Sibilam Sadiba, Lesha, Sorda, and the Nigga, the Ajit, Sosi, the other, or that dishing minute, no Resha said, the niggas some member, Lamsa, and the Chik, Shimju Chet, Sheva, the Tata, Redo, Mindu, that you do Mindu, Shimju Chet, and the Shimju, what the kitchen for Sungorda.
In the Lamaram teachings, we've looked at how to rely on a spiritual teacher in quite some detail. And this starts out with, the chapter in the Lamaram starts out with the need for the student to get to know their teacher, to get to know the qualities of their teacher. And at the same time, the teacher gets to know the student, gets to know the qualities of the student. And this is a process that needs to take time. To get to know someone well is not something that can be done quickly. So therefore, the advice is very clear. Do not follow your emotion, but rather take your time and make a sound decision based on reasoning. If your decision to whether to rely or not rely on someone is based on an emotional response, that is not likely to be reliable. Rather, it's crucial. Take your time, get to know the teacher, and get to see whether they are someone you can place your heartfelt trust in. And in this way, one prevents oneself from making a mistake, from relying on someone that later you recognize, actually, I don't really get on well with this person, or who I don't really feel like going to them for teachings or for guidance. Then one is in a more difficult position. So the advice is clear. You take your time and you make a decision based on reasoning.
On that, that Lamatelia, that the Niki, Timbig, Chansimbig, Yamlanjelba, the way Pishil Palo, or is order, Delia. Bejun Waye, Namtarle, Lamatimbi, Sulter Lap, Dida Sanye Gazal Shen, Dodela Neshever Chas.
So if this is how bodhisattvas investigate and get to know their teachers, certainly so too should we. Now, the text then presents in the next verse the illustration of how bodhisattvas should rely on their teachers. So this is in the 103rd verse. As presented in the biography of Sri Sambhava, train in how to entrust yourself to your lama. This and other trainings spoken by the Buddha should be understood through reading the sutras.
Then Dombokobe dosaji do yiming do Dombokobe do nalia and Beijing said 전주 선배지기 미 천리도와 다 전시 교 bel중세 서로 bel중세 니기다 라마테나게 템피게도 남다르게도 수스템바도 수스템 코르세제 데 손셰피게다 남데티나데 요서와 제산디니게 bel중와에 남다르레 라마템피 술라랍세데 디니게다 bel중 동보고베도 나라 손주에 bel중게 교 bel중게 라마템피게 남다르게 바 도시로 로제 그런 걸 라마 그 라마 템바 나신체는 디나신체 라마 템고레 텐나디게 바장도 시고레스 그 간에서 그 라마 텐나 간에 텐샤 텐에 간에 중샤 텐나시 바로 다시 근데 그 디남다 나시 그 제가 나신체 도시는 야면 라마 템고레 세수수 지산다 라마 템베 술라 랍세디
Yeah, Shantideva turns our attention to a sutra that contains the biography of a bodhisattva, Sri Sambhava. And he turns our attention towards the sutra, and he says, take the manner in which Sri Sambhava relied on his teacher as a model, as something to model yourselves on. So the first two lines, as presented in the biography of Sri Sambhava, train in how to entrust yourself to your lama.
그래서 내내기 다 디나마 건설 라마 라메 텐데 전주심에 라발라 도서 랍상시 림바 도서 랍상지 여러와 디나신데 도치고 데네텐 남다티 발로 티네 코간에 템바레 라마 텐나 간에 템바레 라메가 나와들 전주심에 라발라 카르칼라 고레 콜리아는 간간 라고르스 간나 쇼르와 겨디네 장고레 디나지 도신데 마단 라고르스 라마 템베 술라 surta lapsede kuelama temba nashin and kuelama tenche chense bala laba nashin jen dusin lama tenche la kuri ese tsingi di dona di do.
In this biography of Sri Sambhava contained in Sutra, there it is presented how Sri Sambhava relied on his spiritual teacher. So this, fellow bodhisattvas, Shantideva is saying, fellow bodhisattvas, this you should take as your illustration, how to rely on your own spiritual teacher, the kind of attitude to have towards your teacher, and how to relate to the advice and the teachings that you receive, how to relate to those, and thereby quickly cultivate them within.
Anda dine dida sanje kaza shen dode lane sheparchas. Chizan didang dido dadidi didang se de kondo shibike da domboku be donale sonjibe da kyo paljungi lamate nange ten lama la jenshibe la balaptake namda didang se or didang and dimembege shanda sanje ge sonjebe da denege dode nalia and che sanje ge nichige dode nala sonjibe jenshibe la bala lapsang nyamne rimba kare kare chodu shen lab jenshibe la ba kare kare yoba denege nyamne jidang kare kare chogo dodege du shen de sanje sonsha yore ejere sanje kaza shen dode lane sheparcha sanje ge sonjibe jenshibe labja denem deda dode ma sonjibe dige dode dige lo hore lo ba na du shen lo chen de 하고 같이 거래 가르가르 냠술 연구 거래 냠술 연난가는 연구 거래 당보 가래 니바 가는 연구 거래에서 두신 되대단 손실교되기 발 로호래 로진 하고 같이 거래에서.
So not only should one rely on this specific illustration as a guide to model yourself on how to rely on one's teacher, the third and fourth line, this are what the biography of Sri Sambhava and other trainings spoken by the Buddha should be understood through reading the sutras. So Shantideva is starting us out by saying, look at this biography. This is what you should take as an example, but develop your education. As a bodhisattva, you need a broad education. Read further and get to know other advice given by the Buddha in other sutras.
라비아다 제 심자 탐지기는 상요고방 토버쇼 세비게 셈게네 셈게바 셈니 디고 마찬 심비죠 발라 고고와 제라고와잖아 라바 랍사신 고고레 제신 고바잖아 라비 제니게 라비아의 뜀베기 위신데 기위신된 바소장 안내야 제 소소라게 상지 손셰비게 Dode Nalia, Karakara Sonja, Dode La, Loche, Dinima Karakara Sonshas, then Hawache, Dusin and Yamnacha Warriors, the Geshimora Sungoro, the Geshos, then that is one.
You now, as a new Bodhisattva, wanting to engage in the various activities of a Bodhisattva so as to become a Buddha for the sake of all beings, you need to have a foundation upon which your Bodhisattva activities can be built. And that foundation is developed in dependence on the guidance of your spiritual teacher. And for that guidance for you to be open and receptive to the guidance received from your teacher, or to be open and receptive to the teachings you receive from your teacher, you need to train yourself in the way that the Buddha has presented, for example, in the sutra that contains the biography of Sri Sambhava, as well as in other sutras. Train yourself like that, to rely on your spiritual teacher, so that when you receive advice from him, that advice is, you are open and receptive to those teachings, and you take them to heart. In this way, you'll quickly develop the various bodhisattva trainings within yourself.
Isa dine za dangan zugi karina tuasam gomsum sayade gechimbo jigora, jisa de tubi tuyo giwi shinyen zane karakara nyamni chayade dangbo tuyo gores, ne tubi duende la yana yando samgo gores, jisa da sambala tuyo je, tuyo ne duende ki yana yando samda beche dike lo, yana yando samda, dine hao duenda hao hode, dine gom gores, dine dus cheba nes samdo nyay jike giwi chawa 공부를 다지도 tarbatam jime ko batawela di kechimore sungora di dona jiba chagido adiso.
As we've had reference in recent teachings, it's imperative that we engage in the threefold activities of hearing, reflecting, and meditating. So hearing is hearing teachings, or can be translated as studying in our modern context. So not just hearing, but taking those teachings to putting them in one's mind so that they are learnt, but not just merely intellectually known. One needs to reflect whilst one is hearing, come to a deep understanding of those teachings. Then, as one develops a very broad knowledge base, a deep education that one is reflected on deeply, one will be finally ready to meditate on these teachings. And in this context of hearing, reflecting, and meditating, the word meditating refers to meditating with the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, whereas reflection is what we'd normally call meditation. So one needs to engage in this extensive process of hearing and reflecting, so that one's mind comes to a deep place of transformation. Then one will be ready to engage in single-pointed meditation on these various topics.
kuno di to ne su su ge da rangi ge ke wa chi kom ya le che da shen ya ngo su phan do che la so ba gang tu ke wa gang tu be tu de ne tu be ke wa di thamala ne ran de ne ge ke wa di sha sa da sim ja tham ji do sa yo ko ba to ba sho su be gyul ya ngo wa je do si ngo wa che ri che de ne ge we shin de ne ge da ra ya ge we che ting ge we shin la ma be ma se ji 지게 자침보다 진침부이 세타바침비 최란냠네 띵현디게 변마세 야보치 예심비게 되네게 다 남야 아니게 네 마동아제 될이야 아니 실라마팅 띵기 셈비게 삼다 두 삼다야다 안디네게 아니 가브리엘이야 아니 저게 다 셴라마팅게 라미게 된하게 남다르디게 발로야라 소바다 안도리나리야 라미 진심비게 랍자라 손샤바다 되네게 랍자 손샤베 라바 lama tenang tenang sonshebe kor da tenting tiki pa lo je tenang lo bai na sosilia ana semshu ke da ni su ha kwa ti ngor an du chen lo gore sa ji da ngan zu lia du chen la bja ru di cha gu wa.
To summarize the three verses that we've heard tonight and summarize them in terms of what we should take home in terms of our own practice, is that we should take time to develop a motivation that is focused on fulfilling the needs of others. Develop a motivation that is based on recognizing the value of others to us, the importance of others, that others have an equal need. All others have an equal need and right to happiness and attaining a state of freedom. So in other words, to the extent one can, develop a bodhicitta motivation. And with that motivation developed, then set your sights on what your day ahead, what you're likely to engage in the day ahead, and set the motivation that everything I do, whether it's directly engaging with others or not, in other words, indirectly, may this bring about the fulfillment of this aspiration I've generated. And here, make this personal. Think about what you are going to do in that day. Make it personal to what you're going to be doing. See it as how you can engage in your various activities to directly or indirectly ease the suffering of beings, bring benefit into their lives. So that's your motivation, and you direct it towards your various activities in the day. And throughout your day, remind yourself of that motivation so that it can be kept fresh in your mind. And when the day comes to an end, dedicate in a way similar to the motivation you generated. Dedicate this merit so that all beings attain the state of Buddhahood, the state of lasting, stable happiness. And to really make this come about in actuality, it's imperative to rely on a spiritual teacher who is qualified in the Mahayana, who is both highly learned in the vast, profound teachings and skilled in those teachings, and thereby can guide you in how to cultivate the qualities of the Mahayana within. And that spiritual teacher too should be living within the vows of the Bodhisattva, being an example for us to follow. Moreover, how we rely on the spiritual teacher, so the third verse we looked at, is of great importance. That one first recognizes the teacher has these qualities, then how one relies on the spiritual teacher is of great importance, because then one is truly open and receptive to that advice and guidance. In other words, to the teachings one receives, that one takes them as direct personal advice. And Shantideva gave us a text that we can refer to, this biography of Sri Sambhava, but he also encourages us to gain a broad education, look at other teachings from the Buddha to find out how to rely well on one's spiritual teacher.
Molam Jala and Jige Susukita, Gidina, Serabne, Serap Tamjedo, and Givishing a Lamano, the Tingi de Temperature, Denege, and then never show us even Molam Jada, and in a design and the church cook over our shows in Molam Jade, and the church Dubala, in that Giaji, Gain, Masun the Chi, Gain, Nangi, Mungura, Chizan Chi, Gain, Bache, and the Jig, Church, Shangi, Church, Bache, then Tunga Sobada Kamada, Denigi Ungura, Chiki, Nangi, that similar Church, Deva, Dunya Dumba Meba, and Lera Shandalia, and Dili Chawa, some Daji, Dundigi, some Daji Church, call a Bache Ungura, Chizada, Kin Chinangi, Chiki, and Nangi, Bache Tamje, Sewa shows that. Then Chiki, and the church be Tunga, that Chiki, and the Tunga, Chiki, and Tunga, or Tunga. Then Nangi can Tunga Karina Chasa, and the Punsus of what you are sure as a big that the Negi Molan Jadi, Gachimbacha.
I would encourage you also in the expression of dedication or prayer at other times in the day, because this is an important bodhisattva activity. So in your prayers or your dedication, there are many that are prescribed, that are composed and one can recite, but also you can recite some of your own, so from your own heart. And in there, express the dedication that through this merit, may in life to life, not only I continue to achieve excellent precious human rebirths with all the favorable conditions to meet and engage in the Dharma, but may in each and every life At a young age, may I meet directly my spiritual teachers, and may I recognize them as the great beings they are, and rely on them immediately. Seek their teaching, seek their guidance, and strive throughout each and every life to receive their teachings and to cultivate them within precisely in the way directed. And may I do so continuously without interruption and without loss of enthusiasm or energy. And moreover, may I have all the required inner conditions so as to be open to the Dharma and embrace the Dharma and open and receptive to the advice from my teachers. And may I have and I dedicate further so as to have all the required outer conditions so that I am able to fulfill this wish of living a life focused on accomplishing the Dharma within to be of greatest benefit to others. And therefore, I dedicate this merit so that from this moment forth, throughout all my lives until I rise as a Buddha, may I have a mind focused on cultivating the Mahayana Dharma within to be of greatest benefit to all others. And in this light, I'd encourage you sometimes to read parts of or the entire 10th chapter. It's not particularly long, it's just some pages, and it's not difficult to understand. It's very accessible. And it's really something that's composed in a manner that's quite beautiful. So I encourage you to read it sometimes. And then thank you. We'll conclude there tonight. Thank you. But if there's some questions, then feel free to ask. Yes, Stefan.
Not actually a question, but Lama Zopa very kindly added the 9 attitudes of this biography into the Guru Puja, so some people might not know, which is
So Lama Zopa, he included in the Guru Puja these 9 attitudes. 9 attitudes of from Shisambhava. So these are included within the Guru Puja, and you can reference them there.
in the FPMT version of the Lama Chota.
So it's to be found in the FPMT version of the Lama Chopa, not the Lama Chopa itself, but it's added in.
Yeah, that we do every fortnight.
Yeah.